Art and the Citizen, Reinforcing Civic Norms and Critical Discourses. Sounds very heavy. We're talking about an amazing festival and the idea that a city is in fact a creative space and a different understanding of what a city is. And I'm really honored to have two extraordinary people, Qudsia Rahim and Iftikhar Dadi, if you guys would come on up, talking about the Lahore Biennale. And I think this journey is one you're going to enjoy. I do want to mention we have Iftikhar's book, Lahore Cinema, Between Realism and Fable, and it's available. We only have a few copies. It's available in the store. So I just wanted to do a call out, and let's go on this journey. Thank you all. So who came up with this idea of having this Biennale anyway, and what is it?
Well, who came up with this idea? It came from a need, a necessity. We were all, Manan was talking a little while ago, and he was saying that Lahore is going through urgent needs and necessities. Citizens, people in the government, people not living in Lahore, they all need to see what they can do about it. We all have our, strengths. And I think Lahore Biennale was a group of friends coming together, try to see what can arts do. It seems very remote, Manan was also talking about it's hard to breathe or drink water or eat, and the urgency is now. So about 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, we all were talking about it. A few more years before that, we also know that we see Lahore close itself from its citizens by building tall walls. We are looking at, advanced policing methods to maintain the lived reality of Lahore, the sanctity of Lahore, Lahore. How do you maintain that balance in all of this, right? So I think it was a group of friends who were concerned, citizens also, and wanted to find out what can be done about it and what can we do about it. And we from arts, what does art do about it? And that's what the foundation is all about.
Your thoughts?
So I got involved as an artist and in the first biennial and also as an advisor to the Lahore Biennale Foundation. So one of the ways we can think about the Lahore Biennale, which started, the foundation started earlier, but the first biennial was held in 2018, is to also think about the region. So in the region, there was the Sharjah Biennial that was started in 1993. The Colombo Art Biennial in Sri Lanka was 2009 onwards, the Dhaka Art Summit, and the Kochi Biennial. So there's a way in which regionally, many cities, across South Asia have been also, in a sense, interested in thinking about the biennial.
Let me just jump in. Could we get a very quick definition of what is a biennial?
Yeah, so biennial is actually, its genesis goes back to the world exhibitions of the 19th century. And the oldest biennial is the Venice Biennial, so it's a big international art exhibition that is held every 2 years. And it is basically, it's a temporary exhibition. And and each time the theme is different, basically, right? And so while Venice and some of the older biennials have been following kind of the country-based, kind of model, one of the ways in which in the global South, biennials started with Havana and others, and they have been looking at really how to think about the biennial or contemporary art as relevant to the issues of the global South. So the Lahore Biennial is very much a kind of a global South biennial.
A biennial to me is is an exhibition of ideas and thought and intellect and like-minded people coming together, something a country hosts every 2 years. It is the largest art event that the country hosts, in which it deals with local, international artists, thinkers, curators, scholars, and they have a role to play. And then talking about contemporary moments, issues, and then, you know, become part of the international part of the international dialogue.
And it's really across the city, so in a sense, it treats the city as a canvas.
The way that we constituted the biennial, there were 2-3 things that were very important. I think publicness was very important. If we were trying to connect with the people, if we were trying to, you know, bring some semblance of ownership of our own narrative, because if you remember in those years and moments, there was a lot of uncertainty, and about 10, 12 years ago and before that, we needed, something radical needed to happen in that moment. And I think the Lahore Biennale Foundation, because it was doing work throughout the year and every 2 years the biennial, so I think there was a semblance of taking ownership of one's identity, trying to understand who we are, taking ownership of our history, our legacy, and working with that towards, you know, through our scholars and artists and professionals. But sorry, I forgot your question.
Well, it's quite dynamic. Well, I think you've actually answered
so
it.
therefore the city became important, right? Wall City Authority had just come up when we started. And it was a beautiful partnership between us. I was curious. I was, you know, so many years younger, and I just come from New York, and I wanted to actually see what we can do, what art can do. And then the city was so beautiful because wherever you go in Lahore, you can see the city, its history, its legacy, it's right there, right? So when you have such a beautiful city, you want to work with it. And I think it lent itself so beautifully that we were working with city as its canvas, but also learning from the city while we were working in the city. And so it was a two-way kind of a relationship that we have.
And it seems so dynamic because the engagement of the audience and sometimes people are consciously going places, but often they're encountering the art.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think Qudsia has been very good about working with the city government, the provincial government, and also to finding, you know, kind of sites for each biennial, multiple sites that are, you know, Mughal era, there are colonial eras, you know, like the Lahore Museum, and also contemporary kind of buildings and sites. All the programs are free and open to the public. And the labels are both in English and Urdu, you know, so to encourage kind of maximum kind of participation. And so there is in the biennial, there is an art component, which is that you know, exhibition of artworks and also the making of site-specific kind of work by both local and international artists. But there's also a very rich program of kind of, you know, talks and panel discussions and debates. So these readers that, you know, these Lahore Biennial reader number 1 and 2 are basically a result of that, which is both, it documents the exhibition and also the discussions that take place in each biennial platform.
They're really heavy, which I think means that there's a lot of content, and this is a very content-rich festival. But did you want to show us some of the art and maybe give us a little bit of an experience of what you have had as part of that, and who are the artists who've been participating?
Sure. I don't, where's the clicker? Okay. Yeah, so is there a clicker or?
Should I go fetch it?
Yes.
Yeah, so Qudsia Rahim is the director. And myself, I'm involved as an advisor and also was involved in the first biennial. And the second and the third biennial were curated by external curators, which is Hur Al-Qasimi for the second and John Tain for the third biennial. And so in the first biennial, which was held in 2018, you know, the opening, so again, this is a kind of, in a sense, you know, working with the government and utilizing kind of heritage sites. A work by Bani Abadi, who's addressing speakers playing World War I songs onto the statue of Queen Victoria in the Lahore Museum. In the Shahi Hammam, Aisha Khalid, the miniaturist, is looking at, among other things, one of the things she's doing is looking at the friezes and the paintings and, in a sense, doing repair on them, right, in some of her projects. Shazia Sikandar showing her video works in the Lahore fort in this cavernous space, which is very, with very vast kind of dimensions in the Summer Palace. And Naeem Mohaimin, who's a Bangladeshi artist based in New York, showing his trilogy, which is a very important trilogy on decolonization, basically, and it's a documentary film he's made. Camp, who's currently showing has a show at the Museum of Modern Art right now. They're Indian artists. They came to Lahore. They did a workshop. And they also showed this film From Gulf to Gulf to Gulf that you can see now in MoMA, which is playing right now as part of their exhibition.
So it's really a group of international artists. Are most of them present during the festival?
Yes, yes. We were also good about, Qudsia has been good about, in a sense, we've been inviting Indian artists and scholars and intellectuals, and, we have been pretty successful in getting visas for them, okay? So, okay. Salman Toor, who's also having an exhibition right now. It just opened, I think, 2 or 3 days ago in the city at Loring Augustine. Amar Kanwar is an Indian filmmaker showing his film again in the Summer Palace. Fazal Rizvi doing also an intervention in the Summer Palace about colonial history and tiger hunting.
Now, are these all from the first festival?
This is all the first.
Okay.
So we have about 10 images for each, just to
Okay.
give an example. But
Okay.
for each biennial, I think the first biennial had about 50 artists, the second had about 80, and the third had about 60.
Can I?
Yeah, yeah.
So a little bit of backstory. They keep saying that Qudsia went in with the government and they said, I need the place. So basically that's what was happening. I'm totally excited. This is 10 years ago, 12 years ago, and I'm like going to these government offices. God knows how I got into the government offices, because the first time I went, my father-in-law said, once he found out that I'd gone to some office, where were you? Why did you have to go to a government office? Tell me what did you need? Tell me, and I'll get it for you. And I'm like totally like flabbergasted, didn't know what to say. But I went to the commissioner's office. Oh, Abdullah Sumbul? I said, yes. From the hallway, he's shouting at me, saying, why are you going to the government offices? What do you need? Tell me. He turns around, oh, Abdullah Sumbul, okay, fine. He walked away. We were very lucky to get some really brilliant, amazing government officers, bureaucrats, scholars like Iftikhar and those people who were part of our journey, who helped me build the journey. So going to the government saying, I want Lahore Fort, the entire Lahore Fort for like 6 weeks to put up artworks, they were like, what are you talking about, Qudsia? But, they saw a seriousness, they saw a plan, and they saw the vision behind it. I would like to say in this moment that to this date, I've never been asked by anybody to put somebody in the artists, some artist in there, or, we get money from the government, like 50% of the Biennale, because these are large-scale works, right? They give us money, fund us so that we can actually carry out the program, give us a lot of support in kind. But we are not ever asked, they never intervene, they never they're very excited that we're doing something that other people cannot, right? They cannot, project the city in the way that we are able to work with scholars. And
this is the local city government.
that's correct.
So understanding that kind of a partnership with the arts world is viable and in fact even productive.
Very unique in that moment.
Yeah.
When we told people that we got money from the government, they were like flabbergasted. How can that even happen? But since then, in the last 10 years, you see how the government has been kind to all these cultural producers and people who are working in the arts and literature. that their mindset has changed, and they are now more facilitative and more progressive about it.
I mean, I think it makes the city a destination, both for people outside of the city, but even for people within the city.
So after the 2020 biennial Hural Kasmis, we noticed that the sales of the artwork rise 9,000%. 9,000%. Imagine they were negligible, beyond negligible before, that it rose to that extent. And then, 2021, Lahore is called, during COVID, Lahore is one of the cities to be visited, right? And then we also see that it becomes a city of literature. So we see all those progress follows. I'm not saying this is because of LBF. This is because the government and the people and their mindset changed. Because one of the commissioners who we were working with then actually filed for the UNESCO City of Literature. And then we see all kinds of movements and shifts happening.
Do you feel that there, for both of you actually, that the artists feel a difference in how do they experience the city in a different way, and do they feel like they're creative, engaged in a different way than formerly?
Yeah, I mean, I think very much so. One of the things that, one of the ambitions of the biennial is, of course, to connect Pakistani artists to international, artists and also ways of working. So one of the ways in Pakistan, there wasn't that much public art, right? So people were working in a smaller scale in their studios. But when they were presented with the opportunity to work outside, work in a public realm, I think their whole imagination began to be kind of shaped in a different way. And they also saw what some of the international artists were kind of, the kind of practices that they were bringing. So it also began to change the way, it began to expand the dimension of what art could be, right? Which I think is a journey that is continuing on.
Yeah, I think that's very exciting, and that's why I think it's a kind of, the way you describe it is a kind of ecology that kind of feeds the populace, the government, and the government isn't a monolithic thing. It's the local Lahore government that you're talking about.
Right. I think the in-kind support, in which, security, for example, that kind of like helped it scale it up. So we were dreaming of, local global connectivity, exchange of knowledge, critical thinking, research-driven approaches. We're looking at exhibitions. We're looking at ambitious, like dreaming. I'm dreaming every moment about what I would do next. But it was so nice to find these, the government, I think I have the most incredible board. I mean, these were the people who got together to dream about the biennial, were the people who constituted the board. And then the kind of support that we get from there, from the advisors, those kind of things, it just helps me grow. And then all my job is to dream. And then I just go to the government and say, I want this, and I want this, and I want this. And now it's easy for me. So for example, this place, the Summer Palace, not too many people know about it, but now you guys do. But the first time we opened the doors for Summer Palace, this was, it had 4 inches of muddy dirt on it. And the Mr. Kamran Lashai said, if you want it, madam, you have to clean it also. I said, no problem. I opened the door and I did not know what to do. So what did I do? Go back to Abdullah Sumbal. The commissioner said, listen, I don't know. If I clean it up, all my money is going to go into it. What do? He picked up the phone, called the MD Waste Management. The whole team came to clean it up. And later they all came to see the work. They came to see the work, and the kind of support that we get from people who are, the policemen or the guards who are looking, they bring their families to see the work. They, also because it's open public, it's parks, we're using museum, we're using planetarium.
Okay, let me show some more images, yeah. So this is part of the Summer Palace, right? And this is an installation me and Elizabeth Dadi did, which is neon based on Bhool Bhulaiya and also flow of water. And then also a New York-based Iranian artist, Shirin Nishad, showed her very important film, Turbulent, in it. And Hamra Abbas also showed in the Summer Palace her large-scale light boxes. And then in another site called Mubarak Haveli, which is a old style, Haveli, traditional Haveli set in the old city, Lala Rukh, there was a work of small works, including the archive of the recently deceased Lala Rukh. And this is Mubarak Haveli, which Aisha Jatoi also did these Pia Pardes, she made a architectural frieze in the Haveli itself. And this work by Ali Kazim is called Lovers' Temple's Ruins. This is in Bagh-e-Jinnah or Lawrence Gardens. And this is a site where lovers like to meet. And so he made a kind of a ruined temple made of anatomical hearts that slowly disintegrated, okay, over time. So shall I go to the second biennial and show some images?
Well, before we go to the second,
Yeah.
So the first one you said, I think, was,
2018.
right, and how many artists?
There were about 50.
About 50.
Yeah.
And any recollection that just grabbed you about the challenges of that first one? Because it's always
the first one.
scary to do the first.
I was never scared.
The fearless Qudsia.
No, it's कोई घर से काम करने निकलो तो फिर तो खत्म करके घर आओ ना. So if you make a plan to do something, let's just go and finish it. Let's do it. So I'm my father's training in me. I did glass sculpture when there was nobody teaching, doing glass sculpture when I was in undergrad at NCA. So I learned it at a factory, and then I got, a version of that. I think for me, the most beautiful part was that my goal to myself was to be able to do a biennial, which is why we didn't want to engage with any externals at this point, because engaging with the curator, we just wanted to do it right by the book and to see if we can engage with artists, can we manage the scale, can we take these permissions and get into these spaces, can we open up public spaces for the public in different ways, initiate some kind of conversation. So I think for me, that was the few things that were on my agenda, and I think it went rather well, which is why we got attention of a lot of people, and people such as Hur al-Qasmi, who saw us working in Lahore and thought there was something precious.
Okay, let's go on to the second year then.
Okay, so the second biennial is 2 years later, which is 2020, and it is curated by Hur al-Qasimi, who's the director also of the Sharjah Art Foundation, and currently is curating a biennial in Japan as well as in Sydney. So this is, so she came, she's from the United Arab Emirates. She came for research trips. So this is one of her research trips that she's here. And the works she made are, I don't know, this is the video. I think we can, the one, you can play this. It's check if you can.
Can you hit the video?
No, the one before.
The one before.
Yeah.
Actually, it's quite beautiful. So,
So Hajra Wahid is made of this sound piece in which these are protest songs from various communities that are recorded and played in the Diwan-e-Aam. The Diwan-e-Aam in the Lahore fort was the place where the common people could go and petition to the Mughal emperor. So these songs are really, drawn from this notion of the petitions by ordinary people. I don't know
if the video doesn't go, it just.
Okay. Wael Shauqi, who's an Egyptian artist, works a lot with puppets and narrative, showing his films, and Khadim Ali, who's trained at the National College of Art, now living in Australia, making tapestries about mythology and violence. Diana Al-Hadid, who's a New York-based artist originally from Syria, came and was inspired by the story of Anarkali and made this Anarkali's, kind of tomb, and titled "The Escape of Anarkali," that she could break through the wall. So it's a sculpture realized in steel, large-scale sculpture. Zarina Bhimji, who's of South Asian background and of East African background, looking at the history of colonialism and the relation of South Asians in East Asia. So Bradlaugh Hall is another site that was disused and then is now under renovation. And I think partly that's to the credit of the Lahore Biennale Foundation for drawing attention to its importance as a building. Almagul Menli Baeva, who's a Kazakh artist, lives in Berlin, made this very ambitious work in the PIA planetarium, which was a disused planetarium, and made a work about cosmology and about basically the Ulugh Beg, who was an astronomer, in Central Asia, who was the most advanced astronomer of his time, and the connections between Central Asia, the Persianate traditions, and Lahore as a city connected to those historically. And there were also public performances at the opening. Imran Ahmed is interested in different kinds of breads. So he had actually, a baker bake different kinds of breads. I think this would align well with the food panel we just had. Okay. And then Gino Gaussi is an Afghan artist who did a performance based on kind of traditional Afghani dance, but also with new motifs. And then the Pak Khawateen Painting Club is a group of artists based, from Lahore, who are working on basically hydrology and rivers in Pakistan, and about dams and the social and technological impact of dams. So this is so they made actually all these machines, these consoles, okay, which are actually things that you interact with.
Was there a central theme to that festival, number 2?
So for Hur al-Qasimi, the theme was Between the Sun and the Moon, and it was about connections across the regions, basically, both cosmological, historical, social. Okay, that was yeah. And this is a work by a UAE artist, Farah al-Qasimi, installed in the. And then Barbara Walker, who's an artist based in London, is looking at colonial armies, basically, and in the British, colonial era, and makes these wall drawings of, soldiers, black soldiers, and, people of color who served in the British Army, and then she erases them at the end. So these are temporary drawings, large-scale drawings made in charcoal that last for a duration and then are erased afterwards. Bahar Behbahani, an Iranian artist based in New York, made a work having to do with hydrology, okay? And this was set in the Punjab Irrigation Department in the Michael Rakowitz, who's an Iraqi artist, made this work about the Gulf War, and it was actually shown within the Lahore Museum, so it resonated very well because it's about an American soldier interacting with Mesopotamian antiquities. So, and it's surrounded by antiquities. Okay, so that's just a flavor of the second biennial. Okay.
I mean, I'm so impressed with the breadth of the work and the kind of perspective, because you have both high technology, but you also have, like the Afghan artist that you said was doing live work and interested in parades. And so it's talk a little bit about that, the kind of philosophical idea of it's both temporary and some of it is visual arts, and some of it is installation art, and some of it is live art.
First, I was just trying to formulate, but it would be nice to hear from you also. So the first thing is the constitution of the word biennial and what the exhibition holds and what the exhibition extends itself to. The other aspect is, what do we want out of this thing? And the third is, how do the larger audience kind of respond to it? So we are academically facing organization, I would like to say. So for example, research-based driven approaches are important. Things that help us take charge of our history, like Ulugh Beg. This was a scholar who came through Persia, through Pakistan, Indo-Pakistan at that time, and then settled in Afghanistan. It was the premier of Afghanistan, right, for some time. So these are some ways of taking, ownership of our history, deal with our history. Then there are ways to, how do we, work with the discipline, right? the discipline that we are part of, the arts. How can we benefit, bring opportunities to the artists and the larger art world? And how do we connect with the publics? All of those things are very important to us. And in order to do that, arts are of various forms and shapes and, formalities. So exhibitions are important. For a curator, it's very important to work with the publics. This is something that we had decided as a foundation, because some of the biennales are not very public. They're very exhibition style, very controlled. Some are more public. For us, public was important. This was one way of connecting the people. So, for example, one of the comments that was said to me, actually by my father-in-law, was, "Qudsia, tumne Lahoriyon ko Lahore dikha diya." I thought that was a beautiful thing, because now what you're doing is planning a trip with your children and your family. You're going to Lahore Fort, you're going to the Lahore Museum, you're going to planetarium, you're going to other parks and those kind of things. And a lot of times, people would say to me, this was a very good way to open up the city, right? And then we see different demographics also over there. So what we are trying to do is work with different formations, styles of exhibition making, critical thinking, but at the same time, bringing everybody along. So it's not a fun thing that we do something so exceptional and so academically advanced that other people cannot be part of it. So publicness, in that capacity, we employ different mediums to do that.
No, and I think contemporary art is, has really multiple mediums. And I think one of the things that exciting about the biennial is that it's not just painting or sculpture, but it's people working in all these at different scales, different mediums, and different, kind of durations. So, yeah.
And I love that idea of engaging the entire city, and so that people are seeing the city in a different way. I imagine that that's really changed how many of your audience members now experience it. Particularly, I'm thinking young people.
Oh my God, I thought we were an organization for older people, but when we saw the demographics, because it's mature and it's like, so much thought behind it and et cetera, et cetera. But when we saw the statistics, they were mostly young people. It was incredible. I was like, one of my big surprises was that. And a good surprise.
But also in the sense that, Lahore is actually a city of colleges and students. It's full of students. And so it's also a way, in many projects, the biennial has engaged actually with, with students from the NCA, from BNU, from Kennard, also from high schools. And so I think Qudsia should talk about those projects. You should run through the LPO3 images and then show the public programs. Yeah.
So we have done the first biennial. For me, it was to just exist. The second biennial, inviting Hoor, who also started a foundation of her own at Sharjah, was important for me because she was somebody who started something, right? And it was doing incredibly well. It's one of the most well-known, important biennials and foundations in the world right now. So for me, it was important to learn from her. What does it mean? And for the third biennial, it was very clear to me, if we are academically forward-looking organization, I'm reflecting on the two biennials and I'm asking myself, what do I want for the third? What do we want as for the third biennial? And it was only one thing: research-driven approaches, more deeper understanding, more deeper knowledge about what we are, who we are, our legacy, our past, our present, before we go into, other forms of investigative learning. So I think Iftikhar introduced me to John Taine, who was an incredible academic based in Asia Art Society. And we invited him for the second biennial academic forum. I fell in love with him immediately. And I think in this moment of biennial making, I think we couldn't have had a better person to curate. So this biennial, as you notice, this is John Taine trying to explain, talk about the biennial. So basically, we are still doing a multifaceted biennial. We have new commissions. That means we're inviting artists to create new artworks. We have existing artworks. We have performances, participatory workshops, films, publications, lectures. And this time, the theme of the biennial is Ecologies and Sustainable Futures. This is post-2020, post-2022 floods, right? And we are also, as a foundation, we have been working with ecologies and environments in 2018. I'll share that with you separately. And this was a nice culmination. The Biennale was a nice culmination of that. We're also doing, we can just run the slides, you guys can see, they, be using, there's a title of the artists and the artworks, and you can see how we are now looking at ecologies, sustainable futures. We're looking at, they're not only, trying to plant trees, but when you're working with skills, when you're working with culture, we're working with subculture, those are also important, right? So in 2022 floods, Mehergarh and all that area got flooded. So, people were working with indigo dyes, that got affected, right? Very, very badly. So we, through the biennial, we were trying to actually connect now our goal was to connect with a larger region, larger Pakistan. So, and also now go deeper, right? And a lot of things we can't just, can we stay here for 1 minute?
Okay, sure.
So now what we are doing is we are studying 60 artists.
60, about 60
right?
in this one.
So 30 from Pakistan diaspora, 30 international. Then what we see how many people are invited from the rest of the country. 3-4 artists in Lahore, or 3-4 artists from Karachi or other places. That's not good enough, right? We're hosting something large, we're hosting something big. What do we do? What we did was to mitigate that. At the time of the invitation of the curator, we asked the city of Lahore to host collateral events. This was a very clever move, I would say. In this, what happens is that everybody now has the theme, they have the idea what we will be working with, and they were invited to create their own version of it, right? So this is a new and a different way of plurality, and we saw that 50 plus collateral events were formed at that for the duration of the biennial, which was incredible, right? The whole city was reverberating art and culture, and we were like, okay, this is what Lahore is.
How do you manage that? That is so enormous.
It was beautiful, and I'll tell you another thing later. But what we did in addition to that was invite institutions like Kannade College. They have an arts department, which is very important. We were already working with Lahore College. We worked with the first edition, but NCA, National College of Arts, Beacon House University, LUMS, we were already working with them. But now we had 9 institutions we were working with. Now that was a bit of a work, but that was really good work. But we also were able to then create something as magnificent and large scale and, that we were able to do. This is a We Meant project in which the Beacon House University Textile Department worked with local communities as well as the present students and old students. So altogether, this artwork was built by over 600-700 people. Otherwise, if we would have gone to get this thing done on our own, we would have never been able to do that. So are there any other, there are lots of others. Can we go to the, so these are other.
Yeah, these want to explain. No, so Zarina Mohammed is a Singapore-based artist looking at her herbal practices in healing. So set in Shalimar Gardens, these hammam, where you would have these kind of practices. And then Zheng Bo is a Chinese artist looking at Pakistani laborers working in the UAE tending to date palm trees. Okay, so which of course also grows in Pakistan. So this kind of, again, a kind of a connection between labor and effort and aesthetics, across the region. And then this is where people actually, participants bring a memory, like embodied in cloth, and then that becomes part of the work. So it's a very participatory kind of an ever-growing kind of work. Udedo Collective is based from Indonesia, from the eastern part of Indonesia, from the Papua region. and is interested in mythology and kind of issues of also exploitation of that region. So, so this is Yasmin Lari, the architect from Karachi, who after these are housing, kind of typologies she created in response to the flood in Pakistan that could be built, very inexpensively and locally. So these are examples of that. And Imran Qureshi he did a project on looking at these blue water tanks that are actually made with plastic, and so they're not the best, receptacles to store water for health reasons. And he painted this building, which is, you can see from the new metro line, okay? And there's a video again, but I don't know if I can play the video on the right is supposed to play, but I'm not sure if it's going to play. Anyway. Okay. Okay. Okay, that's fine.
So
Okay. Yeah.
So he's also an important artist and currently showing at the Jeddah Biennial and the Dubai, at Concrete in Dubai right now.
Haegyu Yang, who's a Korean artist based in Berlin, works a lot with paper, as part of her practice, and was inspired by kite making in Lahore and Basant.
Can I do this?
Yeah.
So it took us over a year to work on this, which was incredible because what we were trying to do was, in this moment, if you are found in possession of any material to do with kite making, like the stem or the paper or something like that, you could be put to jail, right? And it's a non-bailable offense. So what we were trying to do was separate the kite making, the skill and crafts of kite making, to the politics of kite flying and those kind of things, right? So we then had to give refuge to the master craftsmen because otherwise the skill is getting lost and we have to do something about it. So we worked in this last biennial, worked with a lot of craft-based work as well. And we invited the craftsmen into our offices. And then with the artists, then they created this language that you see in which we are separating the kite making, because we could not, by law, place kites because we can't. So, but we can actually now transform this art form into other kind of variables. And we are still working with those craftspeople, and we're trying to develop more, develop on the aesthetic language.
I mean, that's such an interesting piece of this story because the fact that kite making and kite flying was banned and seen as dangerous, you have totally recontextualized and subverted that craft, which seems so important, so it's not forgotten.
This is a project made with plastic bag that get thrown away, right? So this is a sculpture that is kind of pumped by air, and this is made by students and faculty at Kinnard College, okay, utilizing recycled materials. And then Chow and Lin, Hong Kong-based artists, work with food systems, okay, and so this is so there's a lot of documentation on the walls, but then there's also this chakki that you can kind of grind your own flour, which Qudsia is attempting to do, okay? And so again, calling attention to the politics and kind of the, food systems, yeah. Abuzar Madhu is an activist working on, he has a Ravi Bachao kind of project. So he does performances, but also does activism.
So the activist and lawyer Rafi Alam said to me, Qudsia, उसने एक परफॉर्मेंस में वो कर दिया जो मैं इतने सालों की प्रैक्टिस से मैं लोगों को समझा रहा हूँ वो नहीं कर सका. So this is the power of the arts, when you invite people to do certain things, they can be so powerful experiences that it leaves a certain space in your heart. This was perhaps one of the most popular performances.
And it really becomes co-owned, right? It's that co-ownership that I think is quite amazing. I think we're going to have time for just a few questions, if that's okay. So raise your hands. We have people who have microphones because we're recording. So if you can raise your hand, we'll get you a mic, and do try to make it a question. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm an educator, and I wonder if you could speak about the power of art education as a pedagogical tool. And I know that your organization is working for climate change and all those areas. So if you could say a few words about its impact in culminating thought and awareness, particularly in the youth of a society. Thank you.
I think we can divide the question. You can talk about the pedagogical aspect, and I can talk about the environment.
Yeah, I mean, I think art works best when it's not, I mean, in the sense, there's all sorts of visual kind of, visual and aesthetic ways of thinking about ideas and causes, right? And so some can be more direct, like you can make posters, and there can be an agit-prop kind of, or direct approaches. But then there's also other more thoughtful and, kind of multi-layered approaches, right? So one of the ways I think in the last biennial, the third biennial, which was focused on sustainability, was, as you can see from the projects, there were projects that, we hope would elicit kind of, thinking and kind of reflection on the part of the audience. So they're not directly about addressing, it's not about a protest march, but it's more about, in a sense, of bringing a long-term and kind of deep and layered awareness about these issues to a broad public.
So answering your second part of the question, we started working informally since 2013 and formally since 2014, and we're very conscious as an organization of our carbon footprint, of our resource, the way that we use our resources, or upscale or upcycle our resources. That's a constitution side of it, which Raza Ali Dada is very much involved in exhibition design. What you see a lot is, Iftikar, myself here, but there are a whole lot of team and people who play a very critical role in making this a success. And Raza Ali Dada is a very critical member of our team who is associated with the exhibition design element of the biennial. And those kind of aspects have been important to us, and he has been working on it from the beginning, right? But then when we did the first biennial in 2018, that's when we realized, my God, you know what? This is an urgency, right? And now we're working closely with the government, so we know what they are working on. So we soon realized that we need to create a partnership with the government and civil society in order to address these issues. And because we have the expertise and they have the will, or they have the scale and implementation. So we started a afforestation Lahore group in 2018. And with Mushtaba Paraja, the commissioner at that time, it was really a good decision on our part. The organization still stands. But what we are able to do with them, with that was, for example, the first time he was cleaning up, and some of the land was with land grabbers, and he was saying Head Baloki, next to Head Baloki, was trying to reclaim the land. And every time I go to the office, because for work, I would see him struggling, and I was like, Manika, why don't you give me this land? I was like, what are you going to do with this land? I said, I'm going to plant trees. So I said, listen, the place is so incredible. It's right next to the river, and they're all kind of fish and birds and migratory, and those kind of things are happening. There's a perfect ecological space. Why don't you create it into a ecological space and write it such, and then nobody would be able to take it? So he got really excited. In the first go, we were able to plant like over 600,000 trees in that space, right? But that just led itself to another thing in which we then in 2018, started catalog, because there was no list to work on that. We needed a list of indigenous trees, and there wasn't none. There was none. So then we created that list. And then we got it approved through various academics and various institutions and field experts. And then we planted those it became quite a sensation, because then what happened was that a year later, everybody who's getting born is planting trees. Everybody, for any special occasion, people were planting trees. The constitution of the group was such that then we were part of, putting the peri-urban policy together with the government. We were able to ban the single-use plastics. We were able to, declare, burning of waste, those kind of things. So, and planting of trees, depending on what kind of land size your house is, therefore, how many trees you need to plant. So all kinds of, these are just few that I'm mentioning. We were able to do a lot. The third biennial, and then we were able to work with the public schools, bringing climate education, ecological practices into schools. We were able to do that. The aspect of the project is still prevailing, and now what we're doing is we are working with government offices to minimize their waste, help them how, to process the same climate knowledge, those kind of things, and developing a scalable model that could be implemented throughout the city. The third edition of the Lahore Biennale, Ecologies and Sustainable Futures, was actually a culmination of all the work that we have done since 2018. So we have done a lot of work in this. We think art and science and interlocking these various disciplines need to all come together to actually address these issues.
Will you come to New York and help us? It's so inspiring. Truly, it's inspiring. I see a question right here.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Arshia Ahmed. I'm a neurologist. First of all, thank you for the amazing presentation and for showcasing what art can do. And the possibilities are limitless. Whilst I'm a neurologist, I'm also one of the founder members of Disability Arts Movement of Pakistan. And I've been trying over the last decade and a half instituting disability arts and having exhibitions by artists with special needs. And I found that initially I had a big barrier to cross, and there was nobody, not many people wanted to indulge me or to facilitate. But then the tide shifted. I think the persistence that we've shown over the last 15 years has been amazing, and we've successfully been able to have exhibitions in NCA and in Al-Hamra in Lahore, and have been, changing the narrative that exists about disability arts. Is this something that your foundation is interested in? Because you mentioned you were absolutely spot on when you said that the merging of arts and science and all these different disciplines, because life does not come with a roadmap that this should be allocated to the arts and this should be allocated to the sciences. So I would love your take on that. Thank you.
Thank you for asking that question. Absolutely, 100%. It has to. We are not trying to grow too fast, too quickly. We are just trying to take the right steps and walking towards it. This is definitely something which is on our radar. And how funny it is that in this moment, I'm terribly sad that I'm not in Pakistan, because a friend of mine, we were working on this together. She's working with some students who are in a school, visibly, what's the right word for it? Challenged, thank you. So they're making sculptures, they're making birds, and they're making faces right now with them. And I'm not there. And we discussed it, and we planned it together, and we were supposed to start. So what we do is we throughout the year, we work on these projects, and then we bring them into the biennial, so that we have some knowledge of what we're doing. So in this moment, she's doing those, and she's sending me pictures, and I'm totally jealous of her. And Sophie.
This is so inspiring, and I'm really sorry, but we're going to have to end here because we have another session. But I think we all share that we're really inspired by the work that you have shared with us, and maybe you need a how-to book so that other cities, other parts of the world can look at that. I think it's very clear to all of us as well, that you don't just wait until 2 months before the festival, that this is an ongoing relationship, and relationship seems to me to be a big part of this. You don't have engagement unless you have relationship. And the arts have created that, but you have created a space where this can live and really just take off in a whole new way. So thank you all for sharing this. And thank you all for being here. Please, big hand.